Good evening. This is the television program produced by the Gay Liberation Network. We'd like to begin with a couple of announcements. Gay Liberation Network will again this year be on Halsted Street for the annual Market Days Community Festival. So look for our booth, which will have a sign similar to the one that you see in this image. This is the largest street fair in the Midwest. It attracts several 100,000 people, and we hope to see you at the fair on August 13th or 14th, or both days. Come down and see us in our booth at the Halsted Market Days. Today we want to talk about scapegoating minority youth on the streets of Boystown, or as I called it here on my sheet, white supremacy on parade in Boystown. Policies of many years standing in the so-called Boystown area of Chicago, that is to say the LGBTQ identified section of Lakeview, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer identified section of Lakeview. Policies of many years standing have been to monitor and control or to rid the neighborhood of youth of color. Protests have taken place over the white racism on display as business owners and residents have called for tough police action against the kids of color who come to Boystown because they are attracted to the city's gay center. And maybe they thought the center on Halsted was built in part for their use. They come there because they're not always welcome and can't be themselves in their own communities. A few days ago, in an isolated act of violence, an African-American youth was stabbed on the streets of Boystown. There was a video that I saw several times on local news programs. And right away, and as I mentioned, for many years standing, this was cited as evidence that something needed to be done about the kids of color on the streets of Boystown. Now, interestingly, an event occurred there some years back where an upper middle class City of Chicago employee who was high on drugs killed a Pakistani cab driver. He backed over him 2 or 3 times with the cabbie's own vehicle. This was a heinous crime, and I believe partly because of outcry from the community, including that of Gay Liberation Network. The crime was prosecuted, and prison time did result. But now the important thing here that I want to mention is that there was no outcry against middle-class white guys that something's got to be done to monitor these people in Boystown. Nothing like you're seeing today and have seen for a number of years. Before this stabbing incident that, as I say, has been widely publicized, there was a so-called Take Back Boystown, Take Back Our Neighborhood event that was staged by business owners and residents. And that event was met with a protest by GenderJUST. Our guest this evening is Joshua McCool, who is a member of GenderJUST. And I would like for him to say just a bit about his organization and why they launched this protest of the Take Back Boystown event.
Well, we've actually, GenderJUST has been doing a lot of work around, building more empowering education and safe education on the South and West Side for youth of color and queer youth of color within the city public high schools. That was our SAEC campaign. The other campaign is the Course campaign, which is to get more resources on the South and West Side for queer youth of color, and which is a big part of the reason why we felt it was necessary to attend this meeting. We've done work with COH. We've talked to COH. We've done trainings with the North Halsted Business Alliance on dealing with more restorative ways of having a safer community and safer education in general. To actually find out that in the North Halsted Business Alliance was supporting these CAPS meetings, and not only that they funded them $50,000 to go towards having more policing and more stricter policies and having more police on Boystown more frequently. Surprised us, because we actually thought that they were attempting to make some kind of progress. And well, I mean, basically, should I just go to the meeting, or should I discuss more about?
Well, you mentioned the COH. That's the Center on Halsted, yes, which is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer community center. I mean, it was built when it was conceived and constructed as a center for the whole community. But I'd like to ask you what your experience has been with the Center on Halsted.
Well, my experience and the other youth that we've actually talked to have not experienced that. We actually talked to over 200 youth, mostly youth of color, that I actually went to the Center on Halsted and actually had been through Boystown a lot, and asked them what their daily experiences were, and asked them if there were any places that they felt uncomfortable with or unsafe at. Where were these where were these places, and the top two places that they mentioned were the Center on Halsted and Roscoe's, outside of Roscoe's and inside of Roscoe's, that they felt that they were being harassed mostly at. And this is not new, I mean, if you look just a couple years back, there were a lot of youth of color who had to walk through the back of the Center on Halsted to get in, because they didn't want them to disturb the people that were present there. Which, I mean, I'm guessing that was some of the white, the white people that lived in the area. But I mean, obviously, if the resources are mostly on the north side versus having more health resources and more queer-friendly areas on the south and west side, then obviously a lot of people from the south and west side are going to have to go to the north side, some people 2-3 hours away, just to get the resources that they need. And I think this is intentional. I don't think this is something that's accidental, that the money has been put towards the north side. When you look at not only the violence that is much higher on the south and west side, but you also look at like the health rates, like the raising of HIV/AIDS on the south and west side is increasing, and that's not because the community is more promiscuous. It's because like the health benefits and the resources that are being offered on the north side. It only makes sense for the rates to decrease on the north side as well. So I think that's really the biggest thing for us, is making sure that these resources are being put towards the south and west side, and being put towards more places that are safe and are empowering to the queer youth and queer youth of color within the south and west side.
The Gay Liberation Network had pointed out from the beginning, before the center was constructed, that when we saw the plans, that this was something that was much more elaborate than it needed to be. There are rooms up there that are being underutilized, and I don't spend a lot of time there, but when I do go there, I notice there's a lot of empty space. They spent an inordinate amount of money on the building, and then they didn't have any money, or not as much money as they needed for programming, and such programming as is there for young people, I understand, stops at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, which is probably when it should begin, and then the center closes at 10. And the kids, if they're able to stay around the center at all between 5 and 10, are out on the street. And I just think, in spite of their protestations to the contrary, that the center never intended that kids would come there from the south side and from the west side. I think they never intended for that to happen. And they certainly haven't, in terms of the programming and the hours that the programming is available, they haven't been very welcoming, I think, to the kids of color. In addition to what you've said about being made at first to come in through the back door, and I understand that there are security guards who follow the kids around in there.
They were actually holding CAPS meetings on the center on Halsted. So there were a lot of police that were actually like roaming through, and of course, if you have a lot of youth of color, a lot of queer youth of color going through there, they feel threatened by that. This is supposed to be a safe place. Why are these police officers roaming all through here? And of course, there were a lot of people that were profiled. There were some people that might have been in the sex trade or might have been homeless, who didn't necessarily want their information being put out there, who were outed by the center on Halsted, and I feel like if they intended to segregate us and to keep us on the south and west side, they didn't do a very good job at it. They didn't think it out very well, because if you put all the resources on the north side, then obviously we're coming to the north side. That only makes sense, but they call it loitering, when it's a large group of youth of color that are roaming through there. But then when it's a large group of white guys from a club coming out, they're hanging out, they're having a good time. So I really think that's an issue. One, by the fact that a lot of these resources, one, are not for youth of color, but two, that as well, that the way that they're looked at when they're going through. I just feel like we should be able to walk through a neighborhood anyway. The community is not just the business owners and, the ones who own the houses. The community are also the people that go through there and go to stores. And, the community consists of more than the people, that live there. I know they feel like this is their territory and that they own this place, but like, you don't own any area. And I really feel like, it goes beyond that. It's also about while it's about getting resources, it's also about the way that queer youth in general are interpreted. Anytime there's an incident like the video, that we saw, it becomes, it's something that reflects upon the entire community of color. But as you described, that when it's an instance where it's an act where it's a white person committing violence or, doing a crime, then, it's that individual. Like when I talk about my experience, when I was coming off of the Blue Line, there was, a lot of guys that came in. It was like a Cubs game that was going on, and there were a lot of drunk guys that came in. And as I was getting ready to walk out the train, the guy walked behind me, and when he walked up towards the stairs, he turned towards me and kept pointing in my face using the N-word, like out loud. The police officer was standing right across from me, so he heard what he was saying. Now, I approached the police officer and asked, why didn't you say anything about it when you saw it? And his excuse was, well, they're just having a good time. They were drunk. I'm sure, it's just a slip up every now and then. It was him that messed up. Not once did he say, oh, we've got to do something about these drunk white men who are coming from Cubs games. That was, but yet this instance happens of violence. And now it's an issue that has to be stopped. We have to be stopped. The youth of color had to be stopped. When I saw this meeting, I've been to a lot of meetings before since I've been doing work and since I've been doing outreach. This is the most blunt racism and classism that I've ever seen.
Which meeting are you referring to?
I'm referring to the CAPS meeting, where this was the Taking Back Boystown meeting at the CAPS building.
Is this the meeting last Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us about that, because when I talked with you earlier, you said that there were many comments made at this meeting that were rather openly racist. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, besides the fact that they continue to use terms like those people or hoodlums or, gangsters, like that isn't obvious enough, like we don't know who they're speaking about. When one of our youth came up to speak his piece and, about having more restorative ways and getting more resources and the things that we actually need to be focusing on and putting our money towards rather than putting more money to policing, the left side of the room was at least 15 people that continued to chant out, drug lord, drug lord, drug lord, because he's Hispanic, and I guess they just figured that was appropriate. And there were just, chants that were going on throughout this entire time. And what scared me is that, of course, we come in there, we're already outnumbered. Like, at least 75% of the people that were there were, mostly, white men, 25 and up, middle class, upper class people that were pro taking back Boystown, because at least 70% of the people that were there were pro taking back Boystown. And like I always ask them, like, what's taking back Boystown when they own, pretty much everything in Boystown? What are they taking back from us? And it's funny because when I first heard about the campaign, I thought that that this was actually a group of queer youth of color that were talking about taking back Boystown, because I was thinking that would make sense because, there used to be a time where there used to actually be more presence before it got completely gentrified, where they actually had more, queer youth of color that were present. So I thought that was what it was. When I found out it was the owners and, the people that live there that were saying this, I was confused. Like, did I miss something? Is there a center that I haven't heard about, or a location that I haven't heard about that we have right now? Because I missed that. So it didn't make sense. And then they were complaining about the violence increasing and how, the violence had met its end, it had met its peak in Boystown. And Boystown has some of the lowest rates of violence in Chicago when you compare that to what's going on the south and west side. And of course, this is more about money than anything. Obviously, I mean, just like downtown with this whole Ron Emanuel mess, trying to get more police officers, downtown because they want to stop the gangs, which means any group of color that walks through there. When you think about that, it's really about money. It's about, we have tourists here, we have people with money that live here, and we have these business owners, that, don't want these people here. And this is where we're getting our money from. This is where they got their $50,000 from. So it's an issue of money, and I really just think that, when you look at how bold, the racism was that took place there, these were people, of I guess, power, you can say. These were the quote-unquote activists. I can tell you how many people that were there that were recruiting us. Oh, you guys, you speak so well. Like we weren't supposed to be educated. Like, you speak so well. You should really work with us on really trying to get these youth out of here. And, like, you really do a lot of work. And we like what you do, but could you please be quiet? Because, you're making an uproar. When, there were so many white people making slurs the entire time that we were there. It got to the point where I was just like, okay, I said out loud, would you just like for the people of color to leave the building right now so you can continue to vent out, your racist, views? And a large people were like, yes, leave, and there was so much support for the comments that they were saying. There was support, and a lot of the people that were against it, they felt, I think they felt swallowed, because a lot of the people that I knew that were there, who I would think would speak up, seemed to be either content or too afraid to speak out against, their views. So yeah, I mean, I think that was my issue. It was the most blunt racism I've ever seen, and it was the most content I've ever seen so many people about the racism that was taking place there.
I was about to mention, can we get that last? GenderJUST is the organization that Joshua is a part of, and their web page is there. So please go there and find out more about this important organization that, as I understand it, is mainly people of color, LGBTQ people of color.
Mostly LGBTQA people of color. We're multiracial, so we think that that's something that is very important as well. But also to make sure that they are also the people that are being affected by the issues, that we're keeping youth involved in these issues. So it's not, the older people or, the people who are allies coming to the rescue and saving them, rather than being a part of a movement and assisting. I think that's important. So it's very important for us to have, youth there and youth of color as well.
Just so people know, I've been around for a while, And white supremacy, white racism in Boys Town is nothing new. Many years ago, there was a bar, I don't remember the name of it, that catered mainly to black and brown people. These were people over 21. It was a gay bar, and but catering mainly to people of color. That they were hassled by the police and perhaps set upon by other bar owners. I don't remember all the details, but they ended up closing. I remember participating with some other people many years ago when there were discriminatory carding practices at several of the bars on the strip there in Boys Town. So what's going on today is nothing new, and the pronouncements that come from on high, from the White House, that this is a post-racial United States are not borne out by the facts of what's going on here in Chicago and many other places.
Yeah, and I also feel while the issues aren't new, I feel like the amount of people that are becoming content or numb to the issues is increasing. I feel like I always say that I feel like when you're doing outreach and trying to get people involved, I feel like the hardest people to push and aggravate and motivate to be involved are the people that are directly affected by the issues. I feel like, for example, like let's say, my mother, for example, who dealt with a lot of harassment when she was on the South Side, to someone on the outside looking in, they would say, oh, these men on these buses, they're catcalling her and they're putting their hands on her, like it's horrible on the outside. But since she's been experiencing it for so long, it becomes something that's kind of like, well, I drown it out, I let it go, it's not a big deal, it happens every day. It becomes something that you get used to, it becomes the norm. And I feel like, it takes a lot to really motivate people and make them understand that, when people say that things are a lot better than they used to be, that's not true. Things are not a lot better than they used to be, because, like for what I was taught, in high school, which is a shame, is that our history began on the boat, and that we didn't actually used to be kings and queens and actually have a lot of things, So, I really feel like, it's really important to understand that things have gotten worse and not to grow numb of the issues, because that's the worst point that you can get to when you become numb to the issues that are affecting the community.
We in GLN certainly agree with that message. We need to wind this up here in the next couple of minutes. I again want to inform people about GenderJUST. You can go to their website, which is now on your screen, genderjust.org. The next GLN meeting will be at 7 p.m. August 3rd at the Burger Park Cultural Center, which is located at Sheridan and Granville, about 2 blocks east of the Red Line stop at Granville. The next CAN TV show of the Gay Liberation Network is 6:30 p.m. Friday, July 29th. We hope that you will tune in. We need to wind this up very quickly. I want to thank our guest tonight, Joshua McCool from GenderJUST, and I want to thank all of you for watching, and we hope that you will come to our next meeting and be available to watch our next show on July 29th.